What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. And I'm making another abomination in this video, which is a combination of a man and a shrimp. I know, this is just such an interesting concept, and definitely not spiraling out of control in any sort of way. I figured I should probably give you guys a little bit of background information. So, Mr. T, he is my favorite teacher, and he teaches history, and for Halloween, he was wearing a shrimp costume, so I thought it would be really funny to make him in a realistic shrimp costume. But then again, it was also his birthday, but I just thought it would be funnier to make him in a shrimp costume, which that's the entire reason why I decided to make this sculpture. I know, I don't know if it was really that interesting, but I can now get on to making the rest of the details and actually describe what's going on instead of just narrating off screen. For this sculpture, I thought it would be a good idea to try and work up instead of down for some reason, but then again, I never really have a plan when I'm going through all these sculptures. It's just kind of guessing and hoping it looks good in the end. And I do have to say, I think these leg muscles do look pretty good if I do say so myself. Of course, I'm proud of my own work. I feel like that would be a little bit strange if I wasn't, but we don't have to talk about that because I can blend in the knees off camera and add some extra girth to the arms because I want Mr. T to look extra jacked for some reason. Also, I just thought it was going to be extra funny instead of just making him a normal guy. And for the shrimp costume, it'll be a little bit easier for it to attach to his body if he's built like a refrigerator instead of just a normal person build. And I say normal person not as an insult, just to say that Mr. T doesn't pump steroids like this version of Mr. T does, because of all of this muscular definition and all of this blending in the muscles, because I'm trying to make it look somewhat realistic, of course. Even though I did take a class on anatomy, the muscular system, we didn't talk about it a lot. We only left it in about a week, so I couldn't really learn a whole lot about it, or at the very least remember, because all of the information was about the itty bitty stuff, not like poses, which was a tiny bit annoying, but it's already time to move on to the shrimp, which does look a little bit odd. I'm not sure what it looks like, but I'm sure someone's gonna think this is kind of funky, before then quickly covering it up in clay. Hopefully it'll make it look a little bit better, and then I can also make the back of the shrimp as well, which Mr. T's head will go in eventually. While smoothing out the shrimp, I realized that the sculpture kinda looks like a banana, but also I just want to make sure it's not gonna be a banana. Obviously you guys saw the thumbnail, but this shrimp is gonna also be slimy and shiny, so I don't think bananas are shiny. Well, maybe they're a little bit, but it's kind of not as noticeable shine, followed by the sides and back of the costume, because if I'm going to make a shrimp costume, the costume covers at least a good majority of the person wearing it. Of course, that's not for all costumes, but at least for this costume, because I was thinking about giving him pants, but I wanted him to show off his muscular legs without showing too much. I'm just going to leave it at that, before also attaching the head and smoothing it out to the rest of the body. And even though that this shrimp, again, is still kind of banana-like, I am somewhat going off of how the actual costumes look, because I want to go for a 50-50 split instead of just a hyper-realistic shrimp, because when I was looking up the anatomy for shrimp, ew! They have like 20 leg things, and they have a bunch of weird plates, and they have this weird like frilly thing on their head, and they have a bunch of things that come out of what I assume their mouth is. But I figured that's too much work for this little sculpture, because school has gotten me behind in making sculptures, and I'm super sorry. I really don't want sculptures taking almost a month to make, but it's because finals and EOCs are getting closer. But again, I will still continue to make videos. I just might try and make a few more shorts because, again, a little bit easier, while I also attach the arms and the little divots for the little arms, because again, this is not the correct amount of little finger things, but I did want to add some at least. And when I looked up models of costumes, that's what they looked like, followed by making the head, which is a little bit of trial and error. It kind of looks like a Teletubby face, but like creepier. But don't worry, I'll fix it in a minute. Or even less, actually, because I don't remember doing a bunch of clips of myself making the face. For this sculpture in particular, since I'm actually going to give it to Mr. T, I want it to look at least somewhat like him, so I need to give him some eyelids. But what I especially need to do is make his face a little bit longer, because right now, this sculpture's head is way too much like a circle, and Mr. T's head is not a circle, and something to help that is to give him a nose and detail that nose, along with an eyebrow ridge and eyebrows that I can texture now. I did the eyebrow ridge off camera, and I detailed the nose off camera as well, but I do have to admit, I think it does look a lot better and a lot more human-like at the very least, before then making a little mouth that I can then carve a mustache and beard around, because he has a great beard that I imagine when I become 35 I'm going to be jealous of. Or maybe not, I have no idea. But it's looking great now, so I can attach the shrimp's eyes to the sides of its head, which is just poked straight on. It's not like it's actually put on in any correct way, because again, this shrimp is not anatomically accurate, only 50-50, followed by the little weird mouth things, and then the very long tentacle things coming from its mouth. I know tentacle is the wrong thing, but I don't know what the name for it is otherwise, so I'm just gonna go with that. Followed by making his shoes, because somehow I forgot to do that. I know that I always leave the hands till last, but I didn't know I also left the shoes to last. That is not what I was going for, so I have to quickly do that and make it look somewhat like normal teacher sneakers or tennis shoes, because I don't really pay attention to what Mr. T wears, so I hope it's close enough. With Mr. T's shoes made off camera to absolute perfection, which is aka about the same quality as I've always made before, I can now move on to making his hands, which I did off camera because I was trying to make it quickly, but I did attempt to do fingernails, but with the pose Mr. T is hitting, you can barely see them, and I thought it'd be kind of funny if he was hitting the Booster Gold pose. I don't know, Mr. T is also just a nice guy. But I can paint the shrimp in a bright glossy orange, because what on earth am I supposed to do? I do want the shrimp to look wet looking, but I want to make sure that at least there's a base instead of entirely relying on the gloss varnish, because I can't fully rely on it, just in case I miss a spot. And as you all know, I'm all about adding extra detail, so I added a little bit more orangey red in all the creases of the costume, which are the creases in between the segments of the shrimp. Again, I don't know what these are called, but I did the same thing for the fin because I want there to be a little bit more variation instead of just being perfectly a traffic cone orange, followed by painting the fingers a lighter orange as well, again to add more contrast and make it look a tiny bit more interesting to look at. And maybe even if you like seafood, maybe the lobster is like semi-cooked or something, before then doing the same light orange on top of the head, which I chose a horrible angle for because it really doesn't look like I'm doing much, followed by painting the eyes black, which technically are mixed with a tiny bit of red, but there's so little red it's still black, before then going back with some even more lighter orange to do even more highlights, because I just can't get enough of the highlights, followed by painting Mr. T's skin, which is tan, obviously, in different layers of tan, and making sure to not paint the rest of the shrimp, because I've done that before on plenty of other sculptures, and that is very annoying. But I was actually very good, and I didn't spill on this time, especially when I was doing the face, because I was really worried that I was going to paint all over the eyeballs, but luckily I didn't, because it is a pain having to go back and fix that, followed by the arm highlights, which is just the same tan mixed with a little bit of white to make the highlights and the muscles pop even more, because again, this version of Mr. T is a costume-wearing, super trend refrigerator monster, I guess. So his muscles gotta be appropriately unrealistic before then painting his shoes as well, which originally I did paint in a rush, so that's kind of why my camera fell, and I added some details off camera, but that's okay, because they're only the secondary thing, because they're only his shoes. They're not the shrimp or the man himself, before painting the rest of the details and highlights, because I want Mr. T's face to look nice and three-dimensional and not look flat, lifeless, and boring, especially his beard, because I was very proud about that, followed by a bunch of high gloss varnish. Just in case I miss any spots, I'm gonna coat the entire shrimp costume in this stuff to make the shrimp look extra wet for some reason. I think I was going for just a hint of unsettling, but I made sure to be incredibly careful and not get it on his arms or his skin or his shoes, followed by a plate, because what else am I supposed to do? So I can start throwing clay around, smoothing it out, throwing it around some more, blending it, smoothing it, doing all the stuff that you would do to a plate. But then again, I'm not a plate maker, and I don't really know how that works. Actually, I'm pretty sure the plate I was basing off of is glass, but I still know how to do that. This right here was a very poor recreation of all the sanding I did, and I was pretty proud of how much I had sanded it, because it almost looks convincing if you squint far enough and look at it from across the room. But I can paint it white and with some high gloss varnish because I want it to look like a plate. Duh. Because I want it to look shiny. And again, I know this is going to obviously look kind of stupid in a what is going on kind of way, but I don't know why I felt that this detail was so important. But once I drilled some holes in, I glued the sculpture in place, and it's on to the reveal. If you enjoyed this video, you should like and subscribe, especially if you are a history teacher and like shrimp. Alright, see you in the next video. Bye.